Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Eleanor Hawkins, and welcome to Telestory Time. You know, today is Veterans Day, and we'll be reading in our Big Do You Know book a little later in the show all about Veterans Day. And now let me read you the poem I love so. The Library, a Magic Castle. Come to the Magic Castle when you are growing tall. Rows upon rows of word windows line every single wall. They reach up high as the sky, and you want to open them all, for every time you open one, a new adventure has begun. The library, a magic castle. And now, boys and girls, the first story that I've chosen for this morning is entitled Tutu, the Little Fawn. Little Red Squirrel and some of his bird friends went to visit Tutu, the little fawn. I hear Tutu is very sad, said Little Red Squirrel. Maybe we can cheer him up. They found Tutu very sad indeed. What's the matter, Tutu? Asked Little Red Squirrel. Why are you crying? Because my horns don't grow, Tutu told them. Well, now be patient, said Little Red Squirrel. Horns take a long time to grow. Yes, be patient, Tutu, said all the birds. I have been patient, but it doesn't do a bit of good, Tutu said sadly. Little Red Squirrel thought for a moment. I know, he said. We'll go and see some of your other friends. Maybe they will know how to make your horns grow. Little Red Squirrel jumped on Tutu's back and off they went into the forest. Soon they came upon a beetle who was sunning himself in the grass. Good day, Beetle, said Tutu. Oh, what beautiful horns you have. How can I make mine grow like yours? That's easy, said the beetle. First you must learn to fly. See, said the beetle, like this. He spread his wings and flew into the air. Tutu tried to fly too, but he fell down and tumbled head over heels in the grass. Oh, how silly you are, cried Little Red Squirrel. Everyone knows fawns can't fly. Mrs. Rabbit, who was watching, shook her head. I never saw a fawn grow horns that way, she said. Flying won't help, Tutu. Little farther on, Tutu and Little Red Squirrel met a snail. Good day, Snail, said Tutu. What lovely horns you have. How did you make them grow so well? The rain made them grow, replied Snail. Yes, sprinkle water on your head, Tutu, laughed Baby Fox, who had heard everything. Maybe that will make your horns grow. At that moment, a big black cloud passed over their heads, and it started to rain. Tutu was about to run under a tree out of the rain, but Little Red Squirrel stopped him. The snail might be right, he said. Maybe water will make your horns grow. So Tutu stood in the rain and let it soak into his head. But soon the rain stopped and the sun came out again. Little Red Squirrel ran to the brook and filled a nutshell with water, and he sprinkled the water on Tutu's head. But nothing happened. Little Red Squirrel went on sprinkling and sprinkling, but still there was no sign of horns on Tutu's head. It's no use, sighed Little Red Squirrel. Water won't help. Maybe Porcupine can tell us what to do. Hello, Porcupine, said Tutu. Please look at my head and tell me if you see any horns coming up. Oh dear, said Porcupine, I can't see anything except your head. Why don't you ask that nice Mrs. Cow what to do? She has very fine horns. They found Mrs. Cow in the meadow. Good day, said Tutu. Please tell me how you made your horns grow. Mine won't grow no matter what I do. Dear little Tutu, replied Mrs. Cow, you must learn to be patient. Only time will make your horns grow. When I was your age, I didn't have horns either, but I was patient and they grew all by themselves. Now yours will too, you just wait and see. Tutu thanked Mrs. Cow. Yes, he thought, she is right. I must be patient. Now that night, Tutu rolled himself into a furry ball in his bed of soft green grass and went peacefully to sleep. He slept so soundly that not even the wind whistling around him woke him. An old owl flew by, hooting and flapping his wings. But Tutu slept on. He was dreaming of the day coming soon when he would have two beautiful horns on his head. The next day, Little Red Squirrel came by to visit Tutu. But Tutu said not a word about making his horns grow. So thought Little Red Squirrel, Tutu has learned to be patient at last. Even Baby Fox, who came running out of the forest just then, knew that Tutu had learned to be patient. Baby Fox did not laugh at Tutu today. Then at last, one day, there they were, two tiny little horns growing out of Tutu's head. Mrs. Cow was right. Patience makes wonderful things happen. Tutu's friends came to see his new horns and wish him well. Porcupine, Baby Fox, Mrs. Rabbit and her family, and all the birds. And of course, Little Red Squirrel, who said Tutu's horns were the loveliest he had ever seen. And that, boys and girls, is the story, Little Tutu, the Little Fawn. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment to read from our Big Do You Know book. Please stay tuned. Boys and girls, I'm going to read from my Big Do You Know book. Do you know an armistice was signed on November the 11th, 1918, declaring that World War I was over? Do you know the armistice was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918? Do you know it wasn't until November 19 and 21 that Armistice Day was declared a national legal holiday by Congress, which was our first original Veterans Day? Do you know Armistice Day honored all men in the armed service who gave their lives in World War I? Do you know in June 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a bill designating November the 11th Veterans Day, changing the day from Armistice Day to honor all United States veterans who have served in all our wars. Do you know now today we are proud to have parades and speeches and special events to celebrate and honor all our veterans who have served in the armed services, protecting our country and making it safe and free. We want to thank all of you veterans of all our American wars for your patriotism, your love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for our country. And boys and girls, I'm very proud that my father served in World War I in France. Be sure and visit your public library sometime during next week. Any of the libraries in the Craven, Pamlico, Carteret Regional Library System. Be sure and check out some very good books on your own library card. And now, stay tuned, and we'll be back with another story in just a moment. boys and girls, get very comfortable and ready to listen to the story, The Giant Who Wanted Company. Once upon a time, there was a giant who lived all alone in his big house. At dinner time, there was only one plate on his big table. At night, only one of his big beds was slept in. There was no noise, no commotion. The giant had no one to talk with. He had no one to walk with him. He was very lonely. "Oh, I'd like some company," the giant said to himself. "I'll go far and near, and I'll invite my friends to come and visit me." So he went far to invite his giant friends. "I'd like some company," the giant said to them. "Could you stop by to see me someday?" "Oh, we'll be glad to come," said his giant friends. "See you soon." Now next, the giant went near to invite his smaller friends. He invited horses and cows and dogs and cats, chickens and goats and llamas and bats and ants and doves. "Oh, I'd like some company," the giant said to them all. "Could you stop by to see me someday?" "We'll be glad to come," said his smaller friends. "See you soon." And then the giant went home and got ready for company. He set some plates on his big table. He put clean sheets on his big beds. He filled his big cupboards with food. When everything was ready, the giant sat down to wait for visitors. He wondered who would come first, giant friends or smaller friends. Soon he heard knocking. Someone was knocking at his big front door. The giant hurried to open it, and he saw all of his giant friends, all of his smaller friends. All the company from far and near had come at once. There was noise in the giant's house then. He had so much company to talk with. The giant shouted, the horses neighed, the cows mooed, the dogs barked, the cats meowed, the kittens mewed, the goats bleated, the llamas made whatever kind of sound llamas make, the bats squeaked, the ants chirred, and the doves cooed. In all that noise, the giant couldn't understand a single word anyone said. There was commotion in the giant's house then. He had so much company to walk with. The giant strode, the horses, they cantered, the cows plodded, the dogs trotted, the cats prowled, the kittens campered, the goats ambled, the llamas moved in whatever way llamas move, the bats swooped, and the ants chattered, and the doves flew. In all that commotion, the giant didn't dare to set a foot down flat onto the floor, fearing he'd step on a friend. The giant had so much company to feed. He seated all of his giant friends around his big table. They ate the roast and the toast, the ham and the jam, and everything else from the cupboards too. He brought in hay from the stables for the horses. He gathered grass from the pasture for the cows. He found bones from the meat for the dogs. "But I've still got so much company left over," said the giant. So the cats looked for scraps, the kittens ate the lickings scraped from the cooking pots, the goats chose oats, the llamas ate whatever llamas eat, the bats searched for this and that, the ants did a sugar bowl dance, and the doves, what could he feed? The doves? And then the doves, who were only polite, cooed and cooed. "Never mind," said the giant. "Never mind, giant, we aren't hungry." But the giant was, and he had to stay hungry, for there was nothing at all left for him to eat. The giant had so much company to spend the night. His giant friends slept in the giant beds. The horses slept in chairs. The cows slept on the sofas, and the dogs slept on the footstools. "But I still got so much company left over," said the giant. So he put the cats to bed on the mats, and the kittens in his mittens, the goats in his coats, the llamas in his pajamas, the bats in his hats, the ants on his plants, and the doves in his gloves. Then the tired giant tried to sleep leaning against a table leg. Now the next morning all the company woke early. They hadn't slept very well in their strange beds. They were hungry too, but there was nothing for breakfast. They had eaten everything the night before. So all the company, great and small, told the giant they'd had a nice time, but they had to go home now. The giant hurried to open his big front door. "Goodbye, goodbye," said the sleepy, hungry giant. "Now come again sometime, but please, not all at once. I'll tell you when." And boys and girls, that is the story, The Giant Who Wanted Company. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment with another story just for you. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you the story, The Tawny, Scrawny Lion. Once there was a tawny, scrawny, hungry lion who never could get enough to eat. He chased monkeys on Monday, kangaroos on Tuesday, zebras on Wednesday, bears on Thursday, camels on Friday, and on Saturday, elephants. And since he caught everything he ran after, that lion should have been as fat as butter. But he wasn't at all. The more he ate, the scrawnier and hungrier he grew. The other animals didn't feel one bit safe. They stood a distance and tried to talk things over with the tawny, scrawny lion. "It's all your fault for just running away," he grumbled. "If I didn't have to run for every single bite I get, I'd be as fat as butter and as sleek as satin. Then I wouldn't have to eat so much, and you would last longer." Just then a fat little rabbit came hopping through the forest, picking berries. All the big animals looked at him and grinned slyly. "Rabbit," they said, "oh, you lucky rabbit. We appoint you to talk things over with the lion." Now that made little Rabbit feel very proud. Well, what should I talk about?" he asked eagerly. "Any old thing," said the big animals. "The important thing is that you go right up close." So the fat little rabbit hopped right up to the big hungry lion and counted his ribs. "You look much too scrawny to talk things over," he said. "So how about supper at my house first?" "What's for supper?" asked the lion. The little rabbit said, "Oh, carrot stew." Oh, that sounded awful to the lion. But the little rabbit said, "Yes, sir, my 5 fat sisters and my 4 fat brothers are making a delicious big carrot stew right now." "Well, what are we waiting for?" cried the lion. And he went hopping away with the little rabbit, thinking of 10 fat rabbits and looking just as jolly as you please. "Well," grinned all the big animals, "that should take care of Tawny Scrawny for today." Now before very long the lion began to wonder if they would ever get to the rabbit's house. First the fat little rabbit kept stopping to pick berries and mushrooms and all sorts of good-smelling herbs. And when his basket was full, what did he do but flop down on the riverbank? "Well, wait a bit," he said. "I want to catch a few fish for the stew." That was almost too much for the hungry lion. For a moment he thought he would have to eat that one little rabbit then and there. But he kept saying, 5 fat sisters and 4 fat brothers, over and over to himself. And at last the 2 were on their way again. Here we are, said the rabbit, hopping around a turn with the lion close behind him. Sure enough, there was the rabbit's house, with a big pot of carrot stew bubbling over an open fire. And sure enough, there were 9 more fat, merry little rabbits hopping around it. When they saw the fish, they popped them into the stew, along with the mushrooms and herbs. Oh, the stew began to smell very good indeed. And when they saw the tawny, scrawny lion, they gave him a big bowl of hot stew. And then they hopped about so busily that really it would have been quite a job for that tired, hungry lion to catch even one of them. So he gobbled his stew, but the rabbits filled his bowl again. When he'd eaten all he could hold, they heaped his bowl with berries. And when the berries were gone, the tawny, scrawny lion wasn't scrawny anymore. Oh, he felt so good and fat and comfortable that he couldn't even move. Here's a fine thing, he said to himself, all these fat little rabbits, and I haven't room inside for even one. He looked at all those fine, fat little rabbits and wished he'd get hungry again. Mind if I stay a little while, he asked. We wouldn't even hear you going, said the rabbits. Then they plumped themselves down in the lion's lap and began to sing songs. And somehow, even when it was time to say good night, that lion wasn't one bit hungry. Home he went through the soft moonlight, singing softly to himself. He curled up in his bed, patted his sleek, fat tummy, and smiled. When he woke up in the morning, it was Monday. Time to chase monkeys, said the lion. But he wasn't one bit hungry for monkeys. What he wanted was some more of that tasty carrot stew. So off he went to visit the rabbits. On Tuesday, he didn't want kangaroos. On Wednesday, he didn't want zebras. He wasn't hungry for bears on Thursday, or camels on Friday, or elephants on Saturday. All the big animals were so surprised and happy. They dressed in their best and went to see the fat little rabbit. Rabbit, they said, oh, you wonderful rabbit, what in the world did you talk to the tawny, scrawny, hungry, terrible lion about? The fat little rabbit jumped up into the air and said, oh my goodness, well, we had such a good time with that nice, jolly lion that I guess we forgot to talk about anything at all. And before the big animals could say one word, the tawny lion came skipping down the path. He had a basket of berries for the fat rabbit sisters and a string of fish for the fat rabbit brothers, and you know, a big bunch of daisies for the fat rabbit himself. Oh, I came for supper, he said, shaking paws all around. And then he sat down in the soft grass, looking fat as butter, sleek as satin, and jolly as all get out, ready for another big supper of carrot stew. And boys and girls, that is the story of Tawny, Scrawny Lion. Remember, boys and girls, today is Veterans Day. Yes, November the 11th. And we hope you will all try to celebrate and be thankful for all of our armed services of the veterans who have fought in all the different American wars. It's a day of dedication to all our veterans. And so now I see it's time for us to close our book of stories for this morning, but we'll be back next Saturday morning. Until then, this is Eleanor Hawkins saying bye-bye for Telestory Time.